Martin Daly had never imagined that the last chapter of his life would begin in a place like Sunset Gardens Retirement Home, hidden behind rows of wilting hibiscus bushes in the outskirts of Fairview, Oregon. The building itself looked peaceful from the outside. Soft beige walls, wide windows, a fountain that hadn't worked in years. But to him, it felt like a waiting room where people sat until the world forgot they ever existed. He stood at the entrance with a single suitcase. His son Jason had carried it from the car, set it down near Martin's feet, muttered something about tight schedules, and climbed back behind the wheel. Leslie stayed seated the whole time, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. The moment Jason shut the car door, Martin knew. They weren't staying. They weren't helping him inside. They weren't even prolonging the goodbye. Jason rolled down the window, just enough to shout, "Dad, they'll take good care of you here. I need to get back for my exam." Leslie nodded, as if rehearsing grief she didn't feel. "We'll visit this weekend, Marty." He knew it was a lie the moment she said it. The car pulled away, taillights disappearing into the trees. Martin stood there staring after them until the wind made him shiver. Only then did he exhale a shaky breath and whisper, "So that's it." He picked up the suitcase himself, ignoring the tremor in his hands, and walked inside. The administrator, a short woman named Cynthia Harper, greeted him with a thin, polite smile. One of those smiles people where when they're trying not to look directly into the sadness of someone else's life. "Mr. Daly, your room is ready. Would you like me to show?" "No," he cut her off. "Just call me a taxi." She blinked. "A taxi? Sir, you just arrived." "I'm not staying," Martin said. "Not tonight." She hesitated, as if debating whether she was allowed to argue. "At least see the room." "I said no." His voice cracked, not from anger, but from exhaustion, and Cynthia stepped back, nodding quietly before making the call. That night, he sat in the dimly lit waiting area, his suitcase at his feet, the faint hum of the vending machine filling the silence. He leaned his head back, eyes closed, thinking about everything he had given his family, years of work as a telecommunications technician, late nights on rooftops repairing transmission lines, every dollar saved, every plan made, all for them. And somehow, he still ended up here, dropped off like an unwanted parcel, filed away into the system. He wondered if this was what a man's life ultimately amounted to, becoming a burden the moment he stopped being useful. The taxi arrived close to midnight. He climbed inside without looking back. When he reached his home in Fairview, a modest single-story house he'd bought 32 years ago, it felt strangely unfamiliar. As if the siding had sagged, the porch lights dimmed, the shadows lengthened in ways he didn't remember. He inserted his key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. He tried again. The key slid in smoothly but refused to rotate, as if the house itself no longer recognized him. A cold wave rolled down his spine. He knocked, first gently, then harder. "Leslie? Jason?" "Open the door." Silence. No footsteps. No surprised voices. Only the distant sound of a dog barking somewhere down the street. He pulled out his phone and dialed Leslie's number. It rang twice before switching to voicemail. "Leave a message. I'll get back to you." Jason's phone went straight to voicemail. Martin stood there in the cold night, staring at his own front door like a stranger. What did you do?" he whispered to the darkness. By morning, he had answers, none of them good. The bank teller looked at him with uncomfortable sympathy after pulling up his accounts. "Mr. Daly, your checking account has, well, it's nearly empty." "That's impossible," Martin said. "There should be at least." It was drained by authorized cardholders. Authorized? Leslie. Jason. His pension account gone too. Transferred into a trust fund he had never heard of. And then came the final blow. His house, his sanctuary, his legacy, the place where he had built every corner with his own hands, was no longer registered under his name. It had been transferred, legally, quietly, to a real estate trust managed by someone named Ray Sutter. And the house was now listed for sale. Martin walked out of the bank with his heart hammering. He stopped near a bench, gripping the railing as the world tilted around him. His own wife had stolen everything. His own son had helped her, all while preparing to lock him away in a retirement home. He spent the next 2 days moving through Fairview like a ghost, drinking bitter coffee in cheap diners, leaning over his laptop in motel rooms. His fingertips grew numb from scrolling and clicking, searching for the name Ray Sutter. The man was everywhere: real estate auctions, bankruptcy sales, distressed property transactions. A closer look revealed connections to shell companies, trusts, and a long list of beneficiaries, including Leslie Daly. So that was it. They had planned this. Carefully, methodically. Martin should have been furious. Instead, he felt hollow. But life had taught him that when something hurts enough, the mind tries to save itself by wandering. And his mind wandered backward, decades back, to Rachel Warren, the first woman he ever loved. Her laughter, the smell of her shampoo, how she used to tug on his sleeve when she wanted his attention. She died young, brutally, in a car accident that shattered his world. After her death, every part of him changed. He became cautious, gentle, too forgiving. He had never fully recovered, and he had never forgiven himself for surviving while she hadn't. Years later, he met Catherine Monroe, a bright-eyed marketing analyst with an easy smile. She wasn't Rachel, but something about her ease, her warmth, soothed him. At first, then came the little signs. A delayed text, a new perfume, the way she angled her phone away when he walked by. Suspicion grew like mold, until one night, he walked into the living room and saw Catherine curled up on the couch, but not alone. Next to her was Harry Lang, a neighbor from 2 streets down, leaning too close, whispering into her ear. Their hands touched. Their laughter was intimate, a knife twisting inside him. His vision blurred. His breath vanished. He had been betrayed again, by another woman he trusted. Martin needed answers. More than that, he needed proof. So he went to see Tommy Chun, an old colleague from his telecommunications days. Tommy still worked out of a cluttered garage lined with monitors and cables. "I need deleted files restored," Martin said simply. Tommy didn't ask why. He just nodded, tapped the desk, and said, "Leave the drive. Come back tomorrow." When Martin returned, Tommy had a folder ready. "You might want to sit down." Inside were messages, emails, voice notes, months of secret communication between Catherine and Harry. Plans, complaints, lies, words that revealed exactly what they thought of him. Martin printed everything, made digital backups, stored copies in cloud drives and USBs hidden in different parts of town. He didn't yell. He didn't confront them. He simply began planning. Redemption was no longer enough. He wanted closure. But more importantly, he wanted them to feel what he had felt. He researched Harry and quickly discovered the man's weakness: stimulants. Not illegal by themselves, but Harry's usage crossed into dangerous territory. Martin had old contacts, people who owed him favors. They provided what he needed. Then came the invitation: a friendly backyard barbecue. Harry arrived grinning, unaware of the trap. While he helped bring bags from the car, Martin quietly slipped a packet under the passenger seat, exactly where police would find it. Later that evening, he staged a break-in at his own house, ensuring that only Harry's items seemed to be missing. He hired a security company to install cameras, specifically positioned to observe Catherine when she returned home. Every detail calibrated, every move precise, every consequence predictable. He wasn't unraveling. He was sharpening. The next day, he texted Harry. "Catherine's stressed. I'm treating her to a spa trip. Don't tell her it's from me." Harry, the fool, believed it instantly. Catherine, delighted by the sudden luxury, left early the next morning. And while she sat in a hot stone sound of miles away, police surrounded Harry's home. They found what Martin had planted, and Harry went from confused to panicked to handcuffed in minutes. Meanwhile, Catherine returned home to an empty house, her lover arrested, her things gone. The cameras captured her meltdown, cursing, crying, throwing objects across the room. That footage, too, Martin saved. He didn't enjoy watching it, but he needed it for what was coming. One evening, he stood outside his own home, the home he'd built, paid for, cherished, before Leslie and Jason tried to steal it from him. He stared at the porch lights flickering gently in the breeze. This house had seen decades of laughter, birthdays, burnt dinners, holidays, arguments, reconciliations. Now it was the battlefield of his betrayal. He wasn't done. Not with Catherine. Not with Harry. Not with Leslie. Not with Jason. Everything they had taken from him, he would take back, piece by piece. And someday soon, under his roof, they would all understand what it meant to betray a man who had nothing left to lose. Leon stepped back into the lobby of Sunset Haven, the weight of his entire life pressing down on his shoulders like a collapsing ceiling. The soft jazz music playing through the speakers suddenly felt mocking. The receptionist gave him an empty, professional smile, the kind reserved for people who were merely passing through others' lives. He didn't look back. Outside, the cold night air sliced across his face as the cab pulled up. The driver, an older man with silver stubble, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Home?" the driver asked. Leon hesitated. "Yes," he finally whispered. "Home." But what did home even mean now? The car pulled away from the curb, and Leon watched Sunset Haven shrink into the distance. A place meant to be his final destination. Yet now it felt like the waiting room of oblivion. A place his wife and son believed he belonged. A place where people were put away, tucked out of sight, like old furniture too sentimental to throw out, but too inconvenient to keep around. He clenched his jaw and looked out the window as they drove through the sleeping city. Neon signs flickered. Wet pavement reflected streaks of red from passing traffic lights. He remembered walking these streets with Helen decades ago. They used to share ice cream on the docks after midnight shifts. They used to dream about a future where they would grow old together. And now she was selling that life, piece by piece, right out from under him. The cab pulled up to his house. The place looked the same, but there was something off, something wrong in the atmosphere, as if the very ground sensed he no longer belonged there. Leon stepped out, paid the driver, and approached the front door. He pulled out his keys. His hands trembled, not from age, but from dread. He inserted the key. Turned it. Nothing. He tried again. Locked, but not by him. His breath hitched. His heart stuttered with panic. He knocked. Harder. Again. "Helen," he called. "Evan, open the door, it's me." Silence. He pounded on the door. One of the neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains before quickly disappearing. He dialed Helen. Straight to voicemail. Then he dialed Evan. Voicemail again. For a moment, Leon stood there in the cold, clutching his phone, feeling every year of his life pressing on his bones. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a ghost, already erased. After minutes of futile knocking, he stepped back, staring at the house that was no longer his. The porch light flickered. The curtains remained still. His family was inside, and he was outside. He felt something inside him quietly fracture. He slowly walked around the house, checking windows, searching for any sign of life. Everything was locked tight, as if the house itself rejected him. Then he noticed something strange. His car, which he always parked in the driveway, was gone. No, that couldn't be. He hurried to the garage, locked. He tried peeking through the small window. It was empty, completely empty. Not even his tools were left on the shelves. A cold shiver crawled down his spine. His car, his things, gone. He stumbled backward into the driveway and sank onto the gravel, his breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. It felt like someone was peeling away layers of his life, one strip at a time. He forced himself up and walked to the mail slot. Maybe, just maybe, there would be something. A note, a clue, a reason. He reached inside. Bills, advertisements. Nothing personal, nothing human. But then something else caught his attention. A thin, folded envelope with no stamp. It simply read, Leon. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Short, clinical, cruel. We think this is for the best. You need proper care. Please don't come back. H.N.E. His wife didn't even write her full name. His son didn't even sign his. Leon stood still for several seconds, staring at the note as if it was written in a language too foreign to interpret. Then, slowly, very slowly, the meaning sank in. They'd cut him off, locked him out, taken everything. And now they wanted him to simply walk away and die quietly somewhere out of sight. But Leon wasn't dead. Not yet. The note crumpled in his fist as he turned away from his house, and walked toward the streetlight at the corner, his shadow stretching long and thin across the pavement. He wasn't sure where he was going, but he knew where he would start. by finding out exactly what they had done and why. The night swallowed him as he disappeared into the darkness, carrying nothing with him but rage, heartbreak, and the quiet promise of a reckoning. Leon walked through the sleeping neighborhood with the steady, numb pace of a man moving on instinct alone. His pulse was uneven, his breath fogged in front of him. He reached the bus stop and sat down on the cold metal bench, gripping the armrest as though the earth itself might tilt and throw him off. For the first time in his life, he had nowhere to go. He reached for his phone and opened his banking app. The screen loaded, then froze, then refreshed. Leon blinked. His checking account, normally stable, modest, but reliable, was nearly empty. Less than $100 remained. His pension fund, built over 4 decades of disciplined work, displayed a message he'd never seen before. Transferred to Portfolio Trust, pending settlement. His throat tightened. Portfolio what? Settlement where? He tapped through every drop-down, every menu option, his fingers shaking. Nothing but red flags, missing statements, and the eerie, hollow emptiness of a digital void where his life savings used to be. Then he checked the property tax app. His house, the place he designed, built, repaired with his own hands over 27 years, was no longer under his name. The listing showed a pending sale. A real estate firm he didn't recognize, a trustee he had never heard of, and a transaction finalized without his signature. His heart punched against his ribs. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't confusion. This was a coordinated removal, financial, legal, personal. His own family had erased him. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing. Leon didn't stand up. He didn't move. He just stared down at the screen, breath shallow, mind spinning. Helen had always been distant in recent years, but this? Evan had always been ambitious, but to do this? He needed answers. He forced himself up and boarded the next bus into the local business district. The night was quiet, the streets empty, but he knew one place that stayed open 24 hours. A dusty, outdated library branch that doubled as a public computer center. He took a seat at one of the old wired stations, the overhead fluorescent lights flickering softly. He typed the name he'd seen in his property listing. Raymond Sutter, Real Estate Portfolio Trustee. Search. His stomach twisted as articles, social links, and news snippets filled the screen. Sutter was a mid-tier real estate agent with a reputation for aggressive acquisitions, a polite industry term for stripping people of properties they didn't realize they were losing until it was too late. He clicked through Sutter's public filings. The man had ties to dozens of trust reassignments, cases settled quietly, out of court, many involving elderly property owners, many involving medical guardianship claims, many involving families. Leon scrolled further. A cold shudder ran through him. Sutter's email was listed openly. But more shocking was the section titled, Professional Associations. In a list of partners and recurrent collaborators, he saw a familiar name. Helen Caldwell, his wife. Leon stared at the glowing screen until the text blurred. A ringing sound filled his ears. He touched his temple, steadying himself. Helen, working with Sutter? For how long? And why? He typed again, searching through business directories. Helen appeared linked to a Caldwell Family Property Trust, established just 2 years earlier. It listed 2 trustees. Helen Caldwell, Evan Caldwell. Leon Caldwell was not listed anywhere. His jaw clenched. He scrolled further down. The trust was authorized to claim financial responsibility over dependent adults under diminished capacity. Diminished capacity. That was the legal loophole. That was how Helen had taken control. They'd labeled him mentally incompetent. He felt heat rising in his chest. Rage, betrayal, humiliation. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, forcing the room to stop spinning. He clicked through Sutter's social media links next. More from instinct than intention. His professional page was full of staged smiles and empty slogans. But his personal account held something much more revealing. Dozens of photos. At dinners. At wine tastings. At lake houses. And in more than a few of them, Helen was there. Helen, his wife, smiling in a way she hadn't smiled for him in years. Leaning close to Sutter. Sitting at the edge of a group photo, her hand accidentally brushing his. Leon's breath caught. His hand gripped the mouse so tightly his knuckles whitened. He enlarged one of the pictures. Helen stood beside Sutter, her hair styled the way she wore it when they first met. A wine glass in her hand. Sutter's arm rested behind her lower back, almost touching, almost claiming. Leon felt a burn deep in his chest. Not just pain, but humiliation. He whispered to himself, "So that's what I was replaced with." The truth, once hidden behind fog and denial, was becoming painfully sharp. He wasn't moved to the care home for his health. He wasn't stripped of his accounts for safety. He wasn't locked out of his home for his well-being. They had removed him to make room. For Sutter. For Helen's new life. For Evan's inheritance. A clean cut. A complete disposal. A surgical removal of an inconvenient old man. Leon clicked through more photos, and what he found next froze him completely. A selfie, taken in his own backyard. Sutter, Helen, Evan, laughing. The pergola he built by hand stood behind them. The grill he restored last summer. The wooden table he varnished in May. The garden Helen once insisted she was too tired to maintain, now freshly decorated with hanging lights he'd never seen before. His home was now their playground. His life was their stage. Leon pressed both palms against the desk, his breath trembling, a metallic taste filling his mouth. He whispered, not in despair, but in something far darker. "You made me disappear." The library clock chimed quietly in the background. He straightened, eyes cold, and pushed the keyboard slightly away. They wanted him erased. They had taken everything, but they had made one fatal mistake. They assumed the old man wouldn't fight back. Leon took out a small notepad from his jacket, one he'd always used at work when sketching wiring diagrams. He opened to a clean page and began writing, slow, precise, careful. Names, dates, account numbers, transaction IDs, property entries, phone logs. Every piece of information he had gathered from the last hour became a potential weapon. He wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to beg. He wasn't going to confront them emotionally. He was going to dismantle them, quietly, methodically, permanently, just like they had tried to dismantle him. The next step was obvious. He needed help recovering everything Helen and Sutter had deleted. Bank statements, emails, messages, legal documents, all tucked away behind access barriers. He needed someone skilled, someone discreet, someone who owed him a favor. Someone like Tommy Chun, an eccentric cybersecurity technician Leon had mentored 20 years ago. A kid who turned into a digital prodigy. A mind sharp enough to pierce any firewall. Leon closed his notebook. He stood up, and for the first time since being locked out of his home, he felt something close to purpose. He walked out into the night, tightening his coat around his shoulders. His steps were slow, deliberate, filled with the weight of what he had lost, but under that weight was steel. He wasn't done, not by a long shot. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking toward the part of his life where he would stop being the victim and become the architect of his family's downfall. Tommy Chun lived in a cramped apartment above a pawn shop, cluttered with towers of old servers and humming machines. When Leon knocked on his door at nearly 2 in the morning, Tommy answered wearing a hoodie covered in solder burns, blinking through thick glasses. "Mr. Caldwell?" Tommy's jaw dropped. What are you doing here? You look like hell." "I need you," Leon said simply. And that was enough. Tommy stepped aside and waved him in. Within minutes, Leon unfolded his notepad on the coffee table. Tommy listened, first confused, then disturbed, then furious. "They took everything," Leon said, voice quiet but controlled. "And they're still not done. They think I'm finished." Tommy cracked his knuckles and powered on 3 monitors. "Then let's finish them instead." What followed was a long, methodical dismantling of the life Helen, Evan, and Sutter had built on Leon's back. Tommy recovered deleted emails showing Helen signing documents in Leon's name. Hidden messages between her and Sutter, revealing the plan to move Leon into assisted care permanently. Digital receipts confirming fraudulent transfers. And the worst, a chain of messages between Helen and Evan discussing how Dad won't remember much anyway, and it's for the best if he's not involved in the sale. Leon sat in silence as Tommy printed everything, page after page, until a thick folder sat on the table. "It's all here," Tommy said. "Enough to end their careers. Enough to put Sutter in prison." Leon exhaled slowly. He felt no triumph, only an icy steadiness. "I want them to feel it," he said. "Not just lose. Feel it." And he already knew how. Leon returned to his street just before sunrise. The lights in his house were on. Helen's doing, no doubt. She hated darkness. The thought should have bitterly amused him, but it didn't. He wasn't going inside yet. He had a plan, and it required patience. That morning, he called the National Real Estate Ethics Board, then Sutter's brokerage headquarters, then the Internal Revenue Service Fraud Division, then Evans University Financial Aid Office. Every call was calm, precise. Every statement supported with documented proof. They needed one more thing. He called the police. "I'd like to report identity fraud, property theft, and the illegal transfer of a dependent adult's funds." The moment he said the words aloud, something inside him settled. It was real now. It had begun. By noon, squad cars pulled up in front of his house. Neighbors peeked through their blinds, whispering. 2 officers entered. 10 minutes later, they walked out with a handcuffed man between them. Ray Sutter. His face was red, twisted in disbelief and fury. Helen rushed out behind him in her bathrobe, shouting, "There has to be a mistake. This is all a misunderstanding." Leon stood across the street, leaning on a lamppost, watching without a word. Sutter glanced at him as he was loaded into the patrol car, eyes narrowing with hatred and sudden understanding. Leon didn't look away. Helen spotted him, hesitated, then stormed across the street. "Leon!" Her voice shook with outrage and panic. "What have you done?" "What you did," he said. "But legally." She grabbed his sleeve, then stopped, as if she suddenly realized she no longer had permission to touch him. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Ray told us this was the best way. You weren't useful anymore." Leon finished. She flinched. "You weren't well," she insisted weakly. "Your memory, your moods. You mean the days you ignored me? Or the nights you spent working late?" She closed her eyes. Leon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You took everything from me. Now the world gets to see what you are." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. That afternoon, Evan arrived in a panic. He ran to Leon, breathless. "Dad, please, Mom said you're overreacting. We didn't mean this wasn't." Leon looked at him, remembering teaching him to ride a bike, fixing his first car, sitting through school plays. All the small things that made fatherhood real. "You stole my house," Leon said softly. Evan's face crumpled. "I thought it was temporary. I thought Ray would help us flip the property, and then..." "And then what?" Leon asked. "Give me my own home back like a birthday gift?" Evan swallowed hard. Shame flooded his features. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Dad, I swear I didn't know how deep it went." Leon didn't respond. Not forgiveness. Not rage. Just silence. A far heavier punishment. 3 days later came the official hearing. Helen arrived trembling. Evan sat 2 rows behind her, pale and rigid. Ray's section was empty. He was already facing separate charges and had been denied bail. The board reviewed the document trail Tommy recovered. Bank transfers, forgery, property conversion, trust manipulation, fraudulent guardianship evaluations. Helen's face drained of color. The verdict was unanimous. The property is restored to Leon. All accounts revert to him immediately. Helen and Evan are stripped of all trustee rights. Fraud investigations proceed. Helen burst into tears. Not of remorse, Leon could see that, but of loss. Of consequence. Leon said nothing. He simply stood, collected the official file, and walked past her. She grabbed his sleeve again. "Leon, please. I loved you." He gently pulled his arm free. "You love the version of me who paid for everything. Not the man." She broke. Completely. When Leon returned to his house, he didn't rush inside. He stood at the end of the driveway, letting the cool wind hit his face. The pergola, the garden, the lights Helen hung for Sutter. All of it stood unchanged. But something in Leon had changed beyond recognition. He entered the kitchen slowly. The walls were quiet. His tools sat untouched in the garage. The place felt different, yet familiar, as though it were exhaling after being suffocated. He looked at the folder of evidence one last time. Then he opened the fireplace grate and fed the papers inside. The flames rose, hungrily swallowing every page, every betrayal, every wound, every memory of the life stolen from him. Leon watched until the last ember died. The next week, he pulled his old toolbox onto the dining room table and began repairing the antique radio he'd abandoned years ago. Its intricate wiring and stubborn circuits reminded him of himself, damaged but fixable with patience. Neighbors stopped by. He helped them with their own repairs, just like he used to. Word spread that Leon was back, and the small community welcomed him quietly, respectfully. His home felt warm again, not because Helen was gone, but because he had returned. Leon tightened the last screw on the radio, wiped his hands, and turned the knob. The static crackled, then faded into clear, gentle music. He leaned back in his chair. For the first time in a very long time, he felt whole. Some problems, he realized, don't just need fixing. They need a complete teardown and rebuild. And that's exactly what he had done with his home, with his family, with himself.